I never believed in the supernatural or paranormal stuff, but recently my life has taken a terrifying turn. Last night, something happened that I'll probably never forget. Something that still makes my blood run cold and sends chills down my spine. This madness started about a week ago, maybe a bit later. I've lost track of time at this point. Let me tell you the whole story from the beginning. I won't go into too many details about myself, since it's not really important. I'm just a young guy living alone in an apartment my parents gave me for my 20th birthday. I'm 23 now, so I've been here for almost 3 years. Everything was calm until recently. It all started, as I mentioned, about a week ago. I came home from work at midnight, exhausted as hell. It was the last work day before the weekend, and all I wanted was to collapse on the couch and close my tired eyes. I should mention that I work as a bartender at a restaurant. That night was crazy busy, with everyone asking for cocktail recommendations like they couldn't read the damn menu in front of them. One woman in particular, with her expensive lip fillers, was acting like she owned the place. It was infuriating. Anyway, I got home, took a shower to freshen up, then laid down on the couch and spent about half an hour on my phone, texting with my best friend David. David's one of those party animal types. All he cares about is chasing girls, even the not-so-attractive ones, drinking and having a good time. To be fair, he doesn't usually succeed at much, besides the partying. Whatever. He was texting me about coming over the next day with some beer and a hookah. Since it was my day off, I figured why not relax and have a few drinks. I turned off my phone, rolled over to face the wall, and fell asleep instantly. Surprisingly, I woke up early, around 9 a.m. I took a shower and fully woke up. While I was in the kitchen making coffee, I heard my phone ringing in the other room. Reluctantly, I went to answer it. It was David, calling at 9 freaking a.m. "Hey, you ready? I found a couple of girls to join us tonight," he said. "Couldn't you have called later? You're lucky I'm even awake," I grumbled. "Oh, don't be so grumpy. Anyway, we'll be there around 5 p.m. That cool?" "Yeah, that's fine. Just make sure to bring some food. I'll be starving." "All right, will do. See you soon, buddy," he said and hung up. I went back to the kitchen to finish making my coffee. In my opinion, a morning without coffee isn't really a morning at all. I was planning on just relaxing a bit today, but something told me I was going to end up getting drunk. I didn't really want to, but with David being bigger than me, I knew he'd probably force drinks on me if I refused. It wouldn't be the first time, and I didn't want a repeat of that. Anyway, I spent the time before they arrived running errands, preparing food, browsing the internet, and so on. That's not important. What matters is what started happening after they got here. True to his word, David showed up around 5 p.m. I was standing on the balcony when I saw a taxi pull up. Out came David with two pretty good-looking girls, all of them walking towards my building with an air of importance. By that time, I had prepared some food and was ready to receive guests. I won't go into too much detail, but we lit up the hookah, poured some beers, and were having a good time. I got to know the girls, and I even liked one of them. Her name was Sarah, a petite girl with dark hair and a fiery personality. So, let me tell you what happened next. We were drinking, smoking hookah, and just hanging out, but that got boring pretty quickly. The girls suggested we watch a movie, but we couldn't find anything good, so we ended up on some video chat site instead. David found something like Roulette. I'd heard of it before, but never tried it myself. We spent about an hour or so messing around on there, laughing at the weirdos we saw. There were girls showing off, creeps doing, well, creepy things, and some actually funny people too. It was getting dark outside. We were running low on beer, and the hookah coals were dying out. I was hoping things would wrap up soon, but no such luck. David grabbed the other girl, Amanda, and said, "We're heading to the store for more. Don't get too wild while we're gone." He slipped on my house slippers, threw on a robe, and slammed the door behind them. They came back about 20 minutes later, David covered in hickeys with the smuggest grin on his face. I swear, that image will haunt my dreams. The chat site was still running in the background. While David was fumbling with his clothes in the hallway, I noticed something weird on the screen. There was this guy who stood up from his chair and walked to the other side of the room, where a noose was hanging. "Hey guys, look at this. David, get over here!" I yelled. He rushed over. "What's up?" "Look, man, is he gonna hang himself?" "I don't know." The guy went back to grab a stool and carried it over to the noose. "Holy shit, he's really gonna do it." I started typing in the chat. "Hey man, what are you doing? Let's talk about this. Have a drink with us instead." The guy came back to his computer and seemed to read my message. Then I remembered I had a microphone. I quickly plugged it in and said, "Dude, stop. Can you hear me?" "He's probably just messing with us," David said, opening another beer. Hearing this, the guy smiled. It was the most disturbing, disgusting smile I've ever seen. His teeth were rotten and yellow. I swear, and maybe it was just the camera or my imagination, but it looked like there were bugs crawling in his mouth. I don't know, maybe I was seeing things. After the guy smiled, David, being an idiot, smiled back. The girls just sat there, grossed out. Suddenly the guy jumped up, got into the noose, and kicked the stool away. Sarah gasped. I sat there in shock, sobering up real quick. David was still insisting it was all fake. But how could it be? The guy had reacted to my message and my voice. The man was still hanging there, kicking. It was a horrible sight. After a few seconds, he went still. The girls started recording it on their phones, and even David stood there stunned. After seeing that, I didn't want to do anything else. We had to finish the drinks David bought, and around midnight, I started trying to get everyone to leave. I wanted Sarah to stay the night, and I think she was into me too, but she said she had work early the next day. She did leave her number though. David and Amanda were wasted all over each other like animals. It was starting to piss me off. I finally managed to get everyone out of the apartment. I called a taxi for Sarah and let the other two figure out their own way home. I think they were planning to go to some club outside of town. Whatever. I cleaned up and was in bed by 2 a.m. trying to sleep. The next day, I was woken up by a phone call around 1 p.m. It was David's mom, crying and asking if I knew where he was. His phone was off, and he hadn't come home. I told her he'd left my place last night, and I had no idea where he was now. I figured he was probably passed out drunk in some hotel with Amanda, so I tried to calm his mom down a bit. After hanging up, I went about my day, mostly staying home, playing games, and watching movies. That evening, I took a shower, had some tea, and went to bed. I was scrolling through my phone for about 20 minutes when I got another call. It was David's mom again, sobbing uncontrollably. When she finally pulled herself together, she told me that David had hanged himself at an abandoned factory outside of town, near that club they were heading to. That must have been where he and Amanda went. His mom was absolutely devastated. I mean, can you imagine finding out your child has taken their own life? I quickly got dressed, called a taxi, and headed to David's house. I was shaking, my mind racing with all sorts of crazy thoughts. I rushed into David's apartment to find his mom crying in the kitchen, and 3 cops inside. One of them pulled me aside to ask some questions. I told him everything about last night, except for one detail I'd almost forgotten. The guy who hanged himself on the chat site. The cop then filled me in on what they knew. They found David hanging in an abandoned sugar factory outside town, way up near the roof. The cops were baffled about how he got up there. There were no intact stairs or ladders. About 300 yards away, they found Amanda's body. She was completely naked, covered in cuts and bruises, with her head twisted 180 degrees backward. The police had never seen anything like it. I sat there in shock, listening to the cop. The murder was horrifying, but how David got up to the roof kept bugging me. That's when I remembered the guy from the chat. I didn't want to believe it was some supernatural stuff, but it was too weird of a coincidence. I was still shaking, trying to process everything. It was late at night, and I'd given my statement to the police. There was nothing more I could do. I sat with David's mom in the kitchen. She'd stopped crying, probably ran out of tears. I couldn't find any words to comfort her as she flipped through David's childhood photo albums. I didn't want to leave her alone, but I had to get home. While waiting for my Uber outside, I couldn't shake the image of that hanging guy from my mind. I just knew it was connected somehow, even though I didn't want to believe it. When I got home, I went to grab some water from the kitchen. That's when I saw it, a piece of old frayed rope about a foot long sitting on my kitchen table. My heart started racing, and I felt dizzy. Where the hell did that come from? Without thinking, I grabbed it and threw it in the trash. I was getting more scared and uncomfortable in my own apartment. It was 5 a.m., but I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. I was sure now that it was all linked to that guy from the chat. But how? Didn't he die? And what was with that rope on my table? Was it a sign? A warning? I sat on the couch, head in my hands, until about 7 a.m. A knock at the door snapped me out of it. It was the same cop from David's place. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. "Sure, come on in," I mumbled. He went straight to the kitchen and pulled out a photo. "Do you know a Sarah?" he asked. "Yeah, she was with us that night. I sent her home in a cab when David left." "Why? What happened?" I started shaking again. "She died last night." "What? How?" "We're not sure, but her body was found in her dorm room. She either hanged herself with a clothesline or was strangled. We found an interesting video on her phone of a man hanging himself. Did you all watch that together? Could it have affected their minds somehow?" I told him everything about the chat site, the guy's creepy smile, how he reacted to our messages. "So it was a live chat?" he asked. "Yeah, we could see him, and he could see us," I said, my voice trembling. "Then why are you still alive if what you're saying is true?" "I don't know. I'm scared. I found that piece of rope this morning. I've never had rope like that, and my apartment was locked up tight. How did it get here?" The cop looked worried now. He glanced at his watch. "I've got to go. Here's my number. Call me immediately if anything else happens, got it?" "Yeah," I agreed. We shook hands, had some coffee, and I walked him out. For the next couple of days, things were quiet. I was starting to relax a bit. But then, it all started up again. 2 nights ago, I came home from work exhausted. I walked into my bedroom and saw a body hanging there. I nearly shit myself right in the doorway. I shook my head, slapped myself a couple times, and looked again. Nothing there. Just my imagination playing tricks on me. I got in the shower, trying to relax and clear my head. Suddenly, I heard noise from my room like something falling. I turned off the water and listened. Silence. Then the lights went out. Now I was really freaked out. I quickly got dressed and ran into the hallway. It was pitch black. When I got to my bedroom, I froze. My room faces the balcony, and even in the darkness, I could make out a figure hanging there. I thought it was another hallucination, but it didn't disappear. I couldn't move. I fumbled for the light switch, and when I turned it on, the thing on the balcony dropped to its feet. I don't know if it was alive or dead. It turned around, and I realized it was the same guy from the chat. Rotting teeth, covered in cuts and bruises. His eyes were glowing, and the stench was unbearable, even through the glass. I was in complete shock. It was horrifying. The thing started banging on the glass with its bony hands. The balcony door was locked, and the glass was sturdy, thank God. But just as I had that thought, there was a terrifying scream, and the glass shattered. My ears were ringing, and I couldn't think straight. But my brain kicked into gear when the creature started climbing through the window, coming right for me. Man, you should have seen this thing. It was pure evil. It was crawling towards me, mumbling something under its breath. I snapped out of my shock and ran to the kitchen for a knife. Once there, I realized I needed to jump out the window. Why didn't I just run for the front door? I don't know. Like I said, my brain wasn't working right. I live on the second floor, so it wasn't too high. I opened the window, grabbed the knife, and jumped. I was shocked when I landed. My legs hurt like hell, but luckily there was a flower bed below that cushioned my fall. Good thing I didn't break anything, because I had to keep running. That thing had crawled out onto the side of the building and was coming down after me. Adrenaline kicked in, and I took off like a bat out of hell. After sprinting for about 5 minutes, I finally stopped to catch my breath and looked back. No sign of it following me. Thank God, I thought. But when I turned around again, it was right there in front of me. How the hell? It was standing practically nose to nose with me. Suddenly, it threw a noose over my head. I felt it tightening around my neck, but my brain was working now. I quickly cut through the rope with my knife and stabbed that son of a bitch in the head. It let out this awful shriek, and while it was writhing in pain, I managed to get away. I didn't want to call that cop. I just wanted to get as far away from there as possible. Thankfully, I had grabbed my phone when I ran. I called an Uber and headed to my parents' place in a small town outside the city. That thing hasn't bothered me since. A week later, I found out that the cop working the case had died. He hanged himself right in the police station. I don't know what the hell that thing was. I'm too scared to go back to my apartment. Maybe I will someday, but not now.